So please welcome this wonderful duo.
I remember Dottie giving her readings from Ma at a New Year's event I attended. I think it was probably in 2011. She said, "I just have a feeling you won't be spending your next New Year's alone." So that was a good message for Ma. I appreciated it. I'm going to sit for the chair for a second. Okay. He's a fun lurker. Okay. So our talk today is about Edgar Cayce and what Edgar Cayce said about soulmates through time. But I wanted to start with a quote from my teacher, Jessica Madigan. I just discovered this little known excerpt from a reading this morning. Because our search for companionship is really found ultimately in the Christ consciousness. And by that, she talked about the Christ spirit that's walked through many different faiths and many different religions. The real search is for the beloved. The real search is for the God within. The Christ within by any name who will not forsake you, who will not turn its face from you. The Christ consciousness has been from the beginning. You were part of it when you were born into the eternal sea of consciousness. You were with it when the morning stars sang as mankind entered into the earth's plane. You are now a part of it. It is closer to you than hands or feet. It is the love for which each of you searches and for which the search has been a long one. And as we talk about the Christ consciousness, I found in knowing Jessica Madigan, who was deeply a student of Edgar Cayce's work, that one of the most comforting concepts to me as a young person was that we do have not only a soulmate somewhere, we also have brother, sister souls and soul families, as evidenced by many gathered here today. And that was so comforting to me, and I hope it's comforting to you too. So I wanted to start out with just a little information about Edgar Cayce. Edgar Cayce manifested one of the truly remarkable psychic talents of all time. He's widely known through 3 biographies: There is a River by Tom Segru, and Edgar Cayce, The Sleeping Prophet by Jess Stern, who was my teacher in Virginia Beach when I went to graduate school at Cayce's University. Many books have been written about Edgar Cayce's life, including my own, the first one linking the goddess tradition to Cayce's work. He was born in 1877 and died in Virginia Beach during World War II. He was giving so many readings for the families of military personnel that he really strained his own health. So he died in his 60s. But he did, as a child, growing up, he wanted to be almost a fundamentalist minister. That was there wasn't television, nobody texted, no internet, and so people loved to go to revival meetings, and they loved to, this as we learned in our UCM history class recently with Reverend Carl Birch, this was entertainment, it was community, and so he longed to be like a Billy Sunday of his era. So he prayed a lot, he read the Bible every year of his life, he didn't have a lot of formal education in the country, and he prayed, and then he was visited by a feminine angel who said, "Edgar Cayce, what do you want?" He wanted to help children who were sick, and he developed clairvoyant, Akashic reading medical gifts that later led into people inquiring because of his high accuracy about other topics, and that eventually led into soulmates. When he died on January 3rd, 1945, he left one of the largest and most impressive collections of psychic information ever to emanate from a single source. So what did Edgar Cayce say about soulmates? And I want to call upon our newest UCM ordained Reverend Helene Marks, who I sometimes meet at Edgar Cayce study groups, to share an excerpt.
For to each soul there is the helpmeet, and that is as that which brings the component one to another in the service for the fellow man. In such may joy and peace and harmony be found.
So we run into questions when searching for a soulmate, and Chris Miller has a few to share.
In our search, we often wonder, if I'm looking for a soulmate, what do I look for? Will they look like me? Will they act like me? Or will they be different? And there's a basic question. What is a soulmate? What is a close soul? And I think we've run into these questions ourselves along the way as we've been searching. It's pretty universal. Will they share the same interest as me? Or this is two parts of the same soul, will they be contrary and the opposite of me to balance me? Okay. And I went on and I was thinking about it. My own personal beliefs are that all spirits should, incarnated in this plane, should be treated equally in their search for the other half. Who knows what they're going to be like? Will they be tall? Will they be short? Will they be cute? Or like me? Yeah. And the sarcastic ones might say, well, these people talk about marriage and who should be allowed to marry another person. And I used to say sarcastically to them, I believe that all people should be allowed to suffer equally. And there's the good days. And with that, Lynn is back.
Okay. Well, Chris touches upon an interesting point, because in our search for a soulmate, we may run into a lot of karmic mates and attractions. Searching for love in all the wrong places. I wrote a number of novels on that subject, and so particularly in this era where at least the baby boomers among us identify with that group, there was a sort of serial monogamy occurring and a widespread search. But the Cayce readings and Jessica Madigan's interpretation suggest that after this millennium that we've stepped into, more and more people of all ages are going to have that sense that there really is a right complement for me. But is our twin soul, or our closest soul, always incarnated as a sweetheart? Not necessarily. Sometimes your closest soul can be in a family relationship, a friend relationship, many different dimensions to this. In Asia, the soulmate concept is represented by the yin and the yang. In Egypt, by the legend of Isis and Osiris. In India, by Rama and Sita. In the Hebrew biblical creation story, Adam and Eve. There are many other biblical references. Jonathan and David, Jessica Madigan felt, were actually soulmates who came into same-sex incarnation as they went to battle together. There is the beautiful language of Ruth and Naomi. So there are many myriad combinations for soulmates. On the Mexican Indian tablet, James Churchward discovered there is the concept of a separated soul. In Greece, it's the myth of Cupid and Psyche. And Plato talks about this wonderful feeling of amazement and recognition when close souls come together. Edgar Cayce suggested that we were androgynous beings, and that within each of us, Jessica said, is a balance of polarity, more heavily weighted in one direction or another. And when we came into matter, as angels having an earthly experience in this mythology, we at first were more fourth dimensional. We made a lot of desire projections intermingling with evolving animal forms. As we used our free will, like teenagers maybe with car keys having a Mardi Gras experience, we found ourselves in matter, but at some point, souls turned back to the angels that hadn't come yet into this plane, into the Christed consciousness, seeking to walk through earthly incarnations on our journey home. And eventually, in this mythology, in Cayce's mythology, each soul who had been on this path was like a separating star that separated into the 5 races of the world, and eventually into masculine and feminine. And out of that complex myth, we have brother-sister souls, a complementary sweetheart, and eventually we cluster in soul groups. So twin souls, alter egos, soulmates, spiritual affinities, splinters of the same essence, kind of all words for the same thing. The way you recognize that person, your companion, to help support you in your journey with understanding the Christ consciousness, would be, the guidelines would be to recognize that person, a real telepathy, a common purpose. I have pictures I'll have in the hallway after, examples of twin souls. If one of you is way to the left in politics, the other wouldn't be way to the right. You basically view life from a complementary window. And sometimes there's some physical resemblance. You could be mistaken maybe for brother and sister, sisters, brothers. There's some sense of commonality at times. Hermes and the Black Madonna, Abraham and Sarah, Guinevere and Lancelot are well-known examples, but I had some others that go forward as I've reached this topic in depth into our time and place. George and Gracie, Catherine Hemperd and Spencer Tracy. Interesting people who might be brother-sister souls, Carol Lynn Peterson and Gerald Peterson. They married in Mormon, Utah. They had a lot of children, and he came to San Francisco to explore his sexual identity in same-sex partnership. He was active in gay rights in San Francisco, and he did tragically contract the HIV virus and came home to Carol near the descent of his life. They were at least brother-sister souls who saw life with love from a common window. Dick Van Patten and his television son, I noticed, closely resemble each other. Laurence Olivier and Vivian Lee, their marriage broke up due to her manic depressive disorder, but they were brilliant in their common talent. Jacqueline Bouvier Kennedy and her father, Black Jack Bouvier. Rose Kennedy and her father, Mayor Fitz of Fitzgerald. When she married Joseph Kennedy, she went home to her father and he said, "Rosie, you made your bed and you're going to lie in it." But they always had a close tie. Erica Jong and Henry Miller, Simone de Beauvoir and Jean-Paul Sartre. Jerry Lewis and his adopted daughter Danielle, and this couple known as the wheelchair couple, who in this life, working out some heavier karma in the physical body, took in scores of disabled children. Your soulmate could be in this room. It could be somebody who's an angel even watching over you out of the body. And Chris had an experience to share about that.
Well, my experience, when I was coming into this planet, I arrived on my mother's birthday, and she had been born on her grandmother's birthday, and it was rather interesting when people found out about that. They thought it was unusual, induced, and other things, and it's just how it happened. But my mom passed away in 1995 of breast cancer, and the night after she passed, she came to me in a dream experience. First words were, "Everything is okay," and that everything is just like it should be. And she took me with her out of the body. I remember going past the moon, how bright and close it seemed, and how the sky was kind of a dark purple color, but the stars were so vibrating and brilliant and showed so much. And as you get close to each one, it was like there was all this information, experiences of lifetimes in each one, that if you stopped, you could, you know, it was a whole lifetime in each one of those. And it was just really amazing. And I'm just going to leave it at that because words can't really describe that entirely. And there is an excerpt in Jessica's book here that says it better than I can. And Jessica, being a great scholar working with Cayce and getting the ARE councils going, and that wrote it in these words that I couldn't better. It says, eternal lovers beyond time. Now, I wasn't talking about my mother at this time. I think we were very close souls and all the blessings. Jessica wrote, you speak of twin souls. In the inner planes there, in the spiritual planes, the greatest happiness is between those who are one, who are neither male or female, but who have blended themselves so that they are, in a sense, one. Although they may still operate in two different bodies and be seen with the outer vision as two spiritual entities. She goes, let us say the two who have been one since the beginning of time found each other. They realize their oneness. They are not just drawn together by the law of attraction. They are also aware of their past lives, their lives out of the body, and these then may experience the greatest happiness here, a complementary love, the ecstasy of which earthmen dream, in which somehow always seems to fail them. But I'm not sure about the failing part. We have so many blessings in our lives. And I think one of the big benefits of being here in this church in UCM is that it opens us up to being able to experience those that we might not otherwise see. Thank you.
So Edgar Cayce and Jessica Madigan are not the only folks who've spoken about twin souls. I'll just share a couple other references. Author and clairvoyant Gladys V. Jones states that the love which soulmates have for each other is a pure, imperishable love which was imprinted upon their consciousness in the form of an eternal pattern for love and marriage, and was buried in their soul memory, never to be forgotten. From the Gnostic treatise on the origin of the world, we read that when this first entity ate of the tree of life, his mind was opened so that he became enamored of his co-likeness and condemned other alien likenesses and loathed them. From Barnstone. Jessica Madigan said that twin souls again incarnate in complementary roles: mother and son, father and daughter, sister and brother, brother and brother, sister and sister, sweethearts, companions, partners, teacher and student. Sometimes one may stay out of the body as the guardian to the other. Lynn Sparrow of the ARE said twin souls may not always incarnate at the same time. Mary and Jesus, according to the Cayce sources, are twin souls. Madigan writes that the awareness of an eternal love does not come until our soul seeks it, even though it is hidden in the heart from the beginning of time. She used to say, you have to earn the right to believe in reincarnation and search for your soulmate. And you earn it through soul development in the earth. I think of someone here, a mother I know who lost a child who I saw this morning, and I wondered if that mother and that son could be close souls through time. And if that's the case, even when we lose another for one reason or another, this tie is eternal. And it suggested that when we sleep at night, when we're really, really deeply asleep, even if we're walking alone at this moment, we join with that other. Because on the throne of the Creator, the Mother, Father, Creator, we're one. So every night, you're with the closest parts of you. And that's comforting. That's really comforting. And some people who've lived a life very much alone in terms of partnership have written the most beautiful beautifully insightful words about soulmates ever, because there's an inner journey through the inner planes that allows you to reach out and make that connection. Franciscan Father Murray Bodo in 1979 reflected in modern-day Assisi, Italy, about 12th century Francis and Clare, whose names are so often linked in legend. Saint Bonaventure stated that she was the first flower in Francis's garden, and she shone like a radiant star, fragrant as a flower blossoming white and pure in springtime. Bodo suggests that Clare and Francis's love for God makes Assisi a magnetic paradise 7.5 centuries later. There are, of course, in addition to such things that were written that reinforce very traditional theology, there are a lot of fun myths and legends that surround Francis and Clare. And one of them is the story about them walking in a snowy time of year, and Francis saying, Clare, we just can't keep walking like this, we can't keep doing this because everybody's going to talk. And so she said, but I don't want to be separated from you. This is the highlight of her heart, her time, their time together. And so she kept wheedling, and finally he said, all right, you can walk with me when roses bloom in snow. So Clare was known for impassioned prayers, and she stopped right on the spot. She prayed from all her heart and all her emotions, and roses bloomed on the bare branches. So they kept walking. And Francis was really conflicted about his desire to have earthly connection. He would sometimes go outside and make a snow family for himself. He made a snow wife and 6 snow children. But he felt somewhat guilty about that, and he would do the horsehair flogging of his shoulders, and sometimes when he and the monks would walk along the streams, he would say, now, women have stepped in these, don't step in the water. He was having some dualism here.
Yeah.
But when his eyes grew weak because of his very frugal diet, as he was living on the road, taking what people put in his bowl, living simply like the lilies of the field, when his eyes failed him, he had to go to Clare to take care of him. And Clare took care of him. And during that time, the most joyful poetry was ever written about brother sun, sister moon, brother wind. It was very creation, spirituality oriented, in which spirit and body were linked, and there was joy. And I think here we are at Mardi Gras, a time of joy before we turn our attention, and excess at times before we turn our attention onto the path that leads us to Easter. And we have to, as old souls, Jessica would say, balance our extremes and balance our need for earthly companionship with our deeper sense of the Christ consciousness through the ages being available to us. She said that whatever we want, we really build in our mind, as we know metaphysically, comes to pass. She wrote in her book, Twin Souls, The Eternal Love, that went worldwide through Fate magazine all around the world long ago. As we understand the Edgar Cayce readings, and as our own research into past lives indicates, life is never unfair. To quote from a portion of the readings given in the Spiritual Destiny of Man, in the last chapter of World Prophecy, the question, does desire carry from one lifetime to another? Answer, yes, you are always you. And although you may be outgoing in expression in one and very shy in another, desire does carry and will eventually fulfill itself, whether on the physical, the mental, the material, or the spiritual levels. The materialist will attract those things which he desires materially. The lonely in heart will find his true mate. The lonely in spirit will find God. So it's important for us to know that desire carries from lifetime to lifetime. I brought one of many illustrations on a couple that went to the Edgar Cayce Foundation because they believed they were twin souls, and this is John and Yoko Lennon. They both have the commonality of a common creative tie because your talent goes with you from life to life, Cayce said. Although they come from different races and different cultures, they had a great sense of oneness, and it broke the Beatles up a bit, but they had that sense of oneness and connection, and they did go to Virginia Beach to get information on twin souls. John had some issues in his life and in his childhood with mother images. Jessica wrote about not deifying our twin soul, as Elizabeth and Robert Browning did in their poetry, because sometimes we have to come and realize the humanness of that complementary soul as well. But they felt to the end that they had that sense of telepathy, commonality, common spirituality, looking at life from a similar window. So we know that there's a sense of a twin soul. We talked about, for this talk, looking at karmic attractions. Karmic attractions can occur when you are so drawn to somebody only to find that you look at life quite differently. And as we journey toward the Christ consciousness, we have many lessons along the way, but there is that comfort and that hope in a more eternal perspective. I'd like us to just take a moment this morning and close our eyes and draw around you a pink light of love. We had a meditation this morning about grounding in the sense of love, returning to that. Imagine yourself in this orb of Valentine's Day, surrounded by the love of the Creator, the eternal Christ consciousness, and knowing that a gift of that is an understanding the comforting relationships and ties that can be yours through a partner, through a sister, a brother, a friend, or soul community. Surround yourself in a glow of pink, as if you're at the heart of an imaginary flower with many petals, with many expressions. And just take a quiet moment and ask yourself, of all the souls who've crossed my path since I entered the earth this time, who are those that I feel a sense of eternal kinship with? And take a moment and let those flowers of the petal reveal themselves, and have a quiet Valentine's wish of love for that soul and receive their energy in return. When you're ready, take a deep breath and bring yourself back from the center of the flower, coming back with a more of a sense of connection and communication, because we know from our studies of our UCM doctrines that through the law of subjective attention, we have only to think about another, whether they're out of the body in the body and far away, as we subjectively put our attention to that soul, we're never separated. We're never separated. And for those struggling with karmic circumstances, I wanted to close with a couple of brief readings. This is from Edgar Cayce, 288-6. He was told that his twin soul came into his life as his secretary, and they weren't in this lifetime together as a couple. But this is what they were told. They need only remain in the future faithful to one the other, ever giving, ever retaining those joys of the relations that bring and give of self in service to others. And these bring joy, peace, and again, uniting of body, soul, and spirit in the next. Remain faithful, therefore, to the end, gaining those joys through daily acts of selflessness for and with others, remembering that in these manifestations, they and all souls become knit one with the other. And the final thing was not only the tests of soulmates. Do you have telepathy? Do you sense each other's moods and feelings? Do you have something of a common look, similar goals and ideals, similar spirituality, a real sense of oneness at times when you're around or think of each other? Those would also be keys to twin souls. And Carl Jung said synchronicity, lots of coincidences that you can't explain. But there was one other that Jessica found in Cayce's work that I think is the most beautiful one. When asked how, young woman asked, how would I recognize my twin soul? How would I ever know? And the reading said, the heart knoweth, the soul never forgetteth. Thank you. Thank you to Chris and to Reverend Marks.
Thank you.